Before we get into today's video, I would like to give a shout out to some of our newest subscribers. Silver Wolf D, X Pretty Baffled X, and Royal Knight of Destiny. If you ever see me shouting out subscribers, it's because your subscriptions are set to public, which lets YouTube notify me that you are subscribed. I did explain this to another viewer who did say they had subscribed, but the notification never came through for them. So I wanted to make sure that everyone knows I'm not purposefully leaving you out on these shoutouts. But without further ado, let's jump in today's video. The Simic Hybrid. Honestly, a pretty gnarly race, and one I probably would use myself if I had the right build for them. And that's probably what you're thinking too. You don't know what to use the Simic Hybrid for. And that's probably why you clicked on this video. Like you do in any other video in this series. You want to know what type of characters are possible for the Simic Hybrid based off of their lore. And while, yes, the Simic Hybrid is a Ravnica race, Faerun does have its equivalents in the mongrel folk and dragon flesh grafter. At least those are the closest that I've been able to see. But we're not talking about them. We're talking about the Simic Hybrid specifically. We're going to be using a combination of classes and backgrounds to see what types of characters one might be able to create. So let's go ahead and start things off with a general basis. For backgrounds, the Cloistered Scholar, Faction Agent, and Sage would be the best bet for a Simic Hybrid. Now, yes, technically speaking, the Simic Scientist also fits here. But if you notice in some of my earlier videos, I did not put any of the races into any of the quote-unquote factions. I just gave them the faction agent if they stereotypically were of a faction. And the same goes for the Simic Hybrid. While, yes, a Simic Scientist would make sense for a Simic Hybrid, in Ravnica, any race can be a part of any one of the factions. And it's actually been stated in some of the lore. For example, a Dimir could steal the secrets of making a Simic Hybrid and create their own. It even has been shown in the lore and the flavor text of the cards. They'll even use the Simic's own research against them, which is honestly horrifying. So, any race can be a part of any faction. It really doesn't matter. So that's why the factions aren't here in the backgrounds. Just so you are well aware. For classes, the most basic classes you can probably do for a Simic Hybrid are Artificer, Druid, Ranger, Rogue, and a Wizard. Though less so the Druid because Simics kind of twist nature, and Druids are more about the purity of nature. But I didn't want to leave it out because there are still some good uses for a Simic Hybrid Druid. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into things. Starting things off with the Artificer, I would say the specialist of the Alchemist and the Maverick would make the most sense for your Artificer. This actually is shown a lot in the different cards. So that's why I wanted to pick those. It was shown a lot in the cards. I don't know where my examples went, but there you go. For Barbarian, I would say the Beast and the Totem Warrior, since those are the more animalistic ones. And the Simic like toying with animals as much as they do anything else. Druid would probably be the next one on our list, having the circles of the shepherd and land, more specifically forest and coast. This is a reference to the mana cost of most Simic cards being green and blue mana. Moving on to fighter, I would say for martial archetypes, the Eldritch Knight and the Rune Knight would make the most sense, because of the magical properties they both possess. For monk, this one seems a little bit odd, but actually, if you look in the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, it does recommend a monk of the four elements, primarily using the air and water disciplines for making your Simic hybrid, or just any Simic character. I also wanted to include living weapon. Most likely the Weretouched would be the more useful one, but it's still a very useful subclass in of itself to have for your Simic hybrid, since a lot of different adaptations you are able to get for your hybrid are natural weapons themselves. Moving on to Ranger Conclaves, I would say the Beastmaster and the Drake Warden would be your best bets, especially when there are a lot of Drake mutants in the Simic hybrid, in the Simic Conclave, as well as having a lot of animal hybrids, even fusing themselves with animals, which is why they're the Simic hybrid in the first place. Moving on to Rogue, you don't really see many for the Simic hybrid, but I wanted to go ahead and put out there the Scout and the Swashbuckler, both representing the mana colors of green and blue. Sorcerer is next on our list, and I thought that Storm Sorcery and Unearthed Arcana's Sea Sorcery would be the most common among Simic hybrids. But there is another Sorcerer's origin that I want to go over. In the Planeshift Kaladesh set, part of the Planeshift series, which is technically canonical with Dungeons & Dragons, I want to make that quite clear. It's technically a second party, but it's still core. Anyway, off topic. In Planeshift Kaladesh, there is a sorceress origin known as Pyromancy, and it does have a homebrew section in it that mentions that you could switch out the fire damage for another type of damage, like cold for a Cryomancer, or lightning damage for an Electromancer. So I wanted to go ahead and put that out there. This would give you an electric eel vibe. And next is the Warlock. Patrons would be the Fathomless and the Kraken. It does recommend the Great Old One for any Warlock, but I thought that these two would fit a little bit better than a Great Old One, especially since we don't really have any Great Old Ones listed in the Ravnica lore. And finally, the Wizard. Now, the two most common schools of wizardry for a Simic would be Conjuration and Transmutation, though I would think that Transmutation would be the obvious choice for any Simic hybrid character, for obvious reasons. And with that is all I have for you today. I do hope that you enjoyed. If you have any suggestions for races or character concepts or even character conversions, let me know down in the comments section below. Until next time, this has been Drehan, and I am offline.